Hello everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Night, your favorite Reddit reading channel. Today we are back on our /AskReddit with some scary stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Serious, frequent travelers of Reddit, what's something you saw when traveling that was so scary you never went back somewhere? I went to an ayahuasca retreat in Peru. The retreat itself was amazing and I'd recommend it to every living person. It was held pretty deep in the Amazon, and in order to get there you have to either pay for a group bus or take a small motorbike taxi. No one is really willing to drive that far otherwise. After the retreat was over I had a couple days to stay and relax before I came back to the States. The girl that I bunked with had some time as well and we decided to go into Tarapoto, the nearest town, and just adventure around a while. We shopped and ate and took a tour through a chocolate factory. She was staying in a hotel in town to catch her early morning flight the next morning, so I took a motorbike taxi back to the jungle alone. About halfway down the road the driver stopped and a man holding an AR came up the cab and started asking me questions about where I was going and what I was doing, etc. I was completely alone with the driver, who stopped for this guy and the guy with a really big gun in the middle of the Amazon. I was beyond terrified. The whole ordeal lasted less than 5 minutes and ended with me paying the gun guy a toll of 10 sols, I think less than $8 used. Not completely sure on the conversion. The driver insisted I had to do this, so I did and we thankfully drove away. A few miles later the driver stopped again and I almost had a heart attack. He insisted he had something to show me and that I should get out of the cab, so I did. It might have been stupid, I still don't know what the right thing to do was. He took me to the edge of the road where there was a cliff and below was the spot where a smaller river smashes violently and spectacularly into the face of the Amazon River. It was among the most beautiful and fantastic things I saw in Peru. We stood in silence and watched the rivers merging for a while before he safely delivered me back to the retreat. It was a scary ride, but man, what a freaking story. My sister, my mom and I were almost trafficked. We are originally from the Balkans, living in Germany. When my parents divorced my mom took us for a holiday back home. The bus drive was 30+ hours. We almost arrived and my uncle was supposed to pick us up at the bus station. But we didn't arrive. It was around 11 p.m. and the bus driver said we had a flat tire in the middle of nowhere. There were 3 other women left in the bus. They started crying, since they told us there were some nice taxis waiting for us on the street to bring us to our homes. Which in retrospective was ridiculous since we all lived in different cities. But my mom and sister already got into the taxi, bags in the trunk. Then the women started screaming and crying, trying to call their husbands. Luckily one husband wasn't living far away so he came with his family and the bus drivers were scared and the taxis left. Long story short, we later found out that a lot of women and girls went missing the last couple of months due to human trafficking. Throughout high school me and some friends had these trips to South Texas desert near the border. We would camp out in the wilderness and shoot guns or build a bonfire. We graduated in 2004. Our last trip was in 2005 and we had a really scary experience. We had a campfire going at night. For those that don't know, deserts actually get cold at night due to lack of humidity. So we had a campfire going and 3 guys came out of the darkness into the light of the campfire. No hello. No what's up. In very basic English the first guy says, "You come with us." This was not a request. We politely declined and the another guy said something in Spanish and was extremely angry. The first guy said to come with him again. We refused and he stepped forward. My friend panicked and pulled his shotgun out. Screamed we weren't going anywhere. The English-speaking guy simply said, Okay. Stay." As he backed up. They left and we quickly put out the fire. I made sure everyone grabbed their wallets and phones. Old Razor flip phones, we got the hell out of there and sprinted towards the car. As we were driving away we saw 3 sets of headlights driving over the flats. We killed the car's lights and drove in darkness on the road until we lost sight of them. We drove to a sheriff's office to report what had happened. We were told that if our story was true, it's a real good thing we did not go with them. It happened in Vietnam in the middle of nowhere. I was just hopping on my scooter outside a 7-Eleven when a young woman ran into the store screaming. She was clearly beaten and her clothes were ripped. A few seconds later 3 men came after her, drag her outside and forces her into a car. One of the men had a knife in their hand. I was so shocked. I wanted to help but I was too afraid to do something. She looked at me yelling and banging at the car window when they drove away. I still think about her sometimes and feel guilty for my non-action. Only Illinois. Had my car windows, left rear and rear, shot out as I was traveling south and approaching a railroad overpass. Bullet entered through the left rear window and exited out the rear window. I continued south until I was able to pull into a convenience store to examine the damage and to call the local police. When the police arrived, they looked at my shot-out windows and said, this hasn't happened for a couple of months now. So it must be a somewhat regular thing in Olney, Illinois for the cop to be so blaze about it. I will never go back to that place. Went camping with buddies in East Texas. There was a national forest campsite, but when we got there it had apparently been abandoned. Turns out the campsite had been closed for years, but they'd never updated the website. There were holes in the roof of the bathroom, etc. We were there anyway, so camped. But then at night heard people shooting guns nearby with people yelling and flashlights in the woods. We got out of there quick. Thailand Pai. When I was dating with my GF we went there. Pai is a sort of a out in the nowhere and popular with hippie hipster tourist spot. They also shot some famous Asian movies in this village, so although it's out in the nowhere it was still quite popular. First thing we noticed was how many stray dogs there were. It was not normal, about 20 dogs wherever you go, and they just walk into restaurants to beg for food, etc. They were all super friendly and chill. When we went there was this huge reggae event. We went there and it lasted till 2 a.m. or so. You had to catch the shuttle bus to get back into the village since it was far out in the fields. When we were back in the village we couldn't find where we parked our scooter. It was scary to search for your bike in the middle of the night with a load of dogs following us and just watching us. When we finally found the bike and drove back to our resort, something strange happened. We saw a lady in the middle of the road at 3 or 4 a.m. at this point, dressed in a long black dress and long black hair in the middle of the road we had to pass to get to the resort. She was flailing her arms around but didn't move her feet or move at all, and there were 30 or so dogs in a circle around her barking like crazy, but none of them went close to the lady. I thought I saw things, but my GF saw it too, and I told her to keep driving and don't stop. The resort was nearby, so we wanted to warn them about it and maybe someone needed help. But there was nobody to be seen for some reason. The barking also stopped and we decided to get to our room and sleep. Well, nope. Over the night we heard someone knocking on our door and window every now and then. Heard the dogs on the distant again, out of the gate, and it continued. The next day we decided to get the fuck out of this town, but every single bus was full due to this reggae event. I decided to pay a driver who approached us for a private drive for 4 times the price, but we just said yes, get us out of here. To this day we still don't know what it was about and felt so bad if it was really a lady who was just crazy and needed help. But every alarm went off and I think it was a good call to keep driving. I hope. This happened in Puerto Rico back in 2003. I would often take long drives to random and secluded or closed beaches at night so I could study in peace. One night while I was out studying I just happened to glance at my rearview mirror and saw that an illegal firearms deal was taking place right behind me. Apparently they weren't concerned about the presence of a witness, which I found to be a huge red flag. Without turning on my headlights, I crept out of that spot and drove off. No one followed me. Definitely ranks in my top 10 creepiest encounters. Edit, yes there are more. Mostly involving handsy old men in public places. Number 1 is a neighbor who declared his undying love for me within a week after first meeting me. I started going on my walks before dawn after that. Back in 2014 I was with my study abroad class in the Old Town area of Brussels, so the most touristy area. I was with 3 or 4 other white American college girls, so not alone. Just a block or 2 from the main gorgeous square was a street we had been told had loads of affordable restaurants. When we get to said street, the men in front of the restaurants told us verbatim this place isn't safe for little girls. We GTFO of there really quickly because that was such a weird and creepy thing for the restaurant staff to tell us. We got amazing fried food near the train station instead, but I do not recommend Brussels as a solo female traveler. We felt we were being followed several times after that, again not in a rough part of town or alone. Only place in Western Europe I've felt nearly that unsafe. Well, more of a camping trip than traveling. But I went to Drumheller, the place where they find a lot of dinosaur fossils, in Alberta. Camped overnight, it was a gorgeous and clear starry night. Until it wasn't. From the tent, I kept seeing flashes of light, which at first I thought was just someone shining a flashlight around. And then I could hear faint booms, so I looked outside, and saw a giant black cloud with an enormous amount of lightning coming from it. I scrambled as quick as I could to toss everything in the tent back in the car, and by the time I was done, it was raining like crazy and the storm was right on top of us. We sat in the car, and watched. It lasted all night long and was the most intense lightning I've ever seen. At one point, I look over at my now ex-GF, and her hair stands right up on end, mine too. And then half a second later lightning hit right beside the car, maybe 5 feet away. It was incredibly loud, like an explosion, and you CPL'd hear the crackle of electricity escaping into the ground. Also, the lightning left a huge streak of ionized air that lasted several seconds, and that's when I realized it wasn't a normal lightning strike, but a positive lightning strike. A positive lightning strike is about 100 times more powerful than regular lightning, and will start from the ground and go up into the cloud. This actually happened right outside my house, so technically doesn't count, but we have since sold it and I wouldn't go back. I was walking my dog at around 1 a.m., and he is a golden and super friendly. All of a sudden he bolts and breaks his collar, and runs up to this man who was hiding behind a tree. The guy yells, and says he is afraid of dogs and tells me to come and get him. So I go and grab the dog and apologize profusely, but at the same time alarm bells are going off. The guy is sweating profusely, and is just, off. The dog is whining and really wants to go to this man, and I tell him he is friendly and not to worry. He responds, well, maybe I could try to pet him. So against my better judgment, I let the dog go closer and he lays down, exposes his belly, and the man has what I can only describe as a moment with him. He pets home for a good minute and has tears in his eyes. Then like a switch flips, he looks up at me and says, it's awful late for a pretty girl like you to be out here in nothing but pajamas. Your dog saved you tonight. Then he turned and walked away. I booked it home. My dumbass dog, who would welcome a burglar into the house with open arms, saved me. I once attended a work training event at a nice hotel in Dallas. For some backstory, I was a 19 to 20-year-old girl. During some downtime in the evening, I decided to walk across the street to a drugstore and purchase some snacks and water. The hotel sold a single water bottle for $7, so I wasn't having that. As I got to the drugstore, there were 4 or 5 men in a car and they were yelling strange things at me. It scared me and made me feel a bit uneasy, but I went inside and stayed inside the drugstore for a bit longer to wait them out. I decided to go back to the hotel after a while, so I walked outside and they were still there, waiting for me. At this point I was very scared and these guys were all yelling things at me. I ran across the street even though the crosswalk wasn't telling me I could go. I ended up making it. I went up to my room paranoid that they would be able to see what floor the elevator went to. After a while inside my room, I stupidly figured they were gone, as I didn't see them follow me into the hotel. I assumed I was being paranoid about the whole thing, so I went downstairs to smoke a cigarette by the fountain at the hotel. At this point the smoking age was still 18 in both my state and Texas. After I got down there and smoked for a bit, I truly realized my mistake. The men were there in the same car. They were yelling at me. One of them was speaking with a valet man, hotel employee, and looking at me. I immediately called my mom. She was yelling at me and scared for me. Then I got off the phone with her to call one of the women who were in training with me. Toward the end of the phone call with the woman I was training with, a man approached me from the group saying how beautiful I was and then walked away and watched me with the group of men. The hotel employee was nearby and I kept making looks at him, showing that I was scared and uncomfortable, but he had no response. I thought to myself that maybe these men were also staying in the hotel, so that could have been why they were there. But soon after the call, the woman came and found me and stayed with me. She was older than me and seemed very much like she could be my mother, so she stared them down with the most mama bear look I've ever seen, and they ended up leaving soon after. At that point I realized they had never been staying at that hotel, and those men were definitely 100% going to do something to me if she wasn't there. The next day I spoke to some of the other women in my training class, and one of them was literally drugged by a man from the hotel. She had completely blacked out and woke up with her face down on a table outside with no memory of it. It turned out that the area of Dallas was known for sex work, but I'm not sure if that contributed to what happened to either of us. That's it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.